This week we honor the brave men and women who fought for the freedoms we enjoy today. From across Canada, this is the Remembrance Day edition of Outburst.
Our country just didn't appear out of nowhere with no cost and with no sacrifice.
They've given us our freedom.
They did what they had to do. They defended their country and defended the free world.
Thank you for everything you've done and continue doing for us.
Hello, I'm Glenn McGuinness and welcome to Outburst. For many Canadians, November 11th is a day of reflection. And no matter where you may live in this country, the sacrifices made by our men and women in uniform has given us the freedoms we enjoy today. So we set out across the country with our first question. What is the legacy of Canada's men and women in uniform?
To say that the legacy is one that deeply impacts me, it tells the story of my entire family's life and the values that we have the values that have been instilled in each of us.
I don't know if the younger generation coming up is still aware of what these men and women fought for. I think it's our duty, or my duty, to reinforce with the younger people that the importance of and what the men and women did sacrifice years ago.
They lived for Canada, they died for Canada. Didn't matter where they were from, they still supported Canada right up to the day they died, or died unfortunately on a battlefield protecting their country.
Our country just didn't appear out of nowhere with no cost and with no sacrifice. And knowing that our country has that legacy of people who are willing to lay down their lives for the freedom of others. So knowing that kind of legacy is behind us, it could give us motivation to provide that kind of a legacy even today. We might not have the same circumstances, or we might not be facing war in the ways that our veterans did, but yet we can learn, okay, how can I fight for my country now? How can I serve? How can I provide a future for my kids with a legacy of commitment and a legacy of sacrifice, and just to help them understand that, you know, living the lives we do doesn't just happen out of nowhere.
I mean, certainly a monumental kind of world impact from our involvement, especially in the World Wars, but World War II. So I think Remembrance Day does signify the importance that it does kind of teach us younger generation folks of the sacrifices that our relatives have made in, you know, creating freedom across the world. Certainly, you know, our role of, and what we still continue to play in the Special Forces role. We may not have the biggest force out there, but we certainly have one of the most strategic and smartest forces out there. So I think it is that time of year that it forces everybody to sit back and reflect a little bit on the sacrifices that were made.
It's a source of pride and a source of people who have entered into something because they knew how important it was to the world. And I think that then really reflects something so important back to our children.
Well, I think there's tremendous respect for them, and we really don't comprehend what they actually did. I know people talk about it as excitement and a thing to do, but none of us have had to do that. They were all in.
Just that they're honorary people, and that they've done a lot for our country, and just the fact that they've been able to give us this life that we live every day is great, and I'm very thankful for that.
I think Canada's foreign policy has really been about sticking up for the little guy. And I think if you look back to our involvement through the Great Wars, that's really what it's been about. Obviously, as we've moved forward through more recent war activities, I think we get a little bit sketchier in terms of our legacy as the good guys. In general, I'm always very grateful for the service of our servicemen and women throughout the years.
The proposed legacy is peacekeeping, but as a past veteran, I can tell the exact opposite. Okay, The legacy is very, very long. I served in Bosnia. I served in Somalia. I did one tour in Qatar. The legacy itself is very, very long. It's very, very established. It's a lot of heroes. There's not a lot other than to say about that. You don't understand unless you've actually been through it.
Many legacies. If we think every moment of every day that we've spent our lives having our freedom, having freedom from anarchy, freedom from religious impacts, everything the Canadian soldiers have done to protect our rights and our freedoms, that we can walk down the street and not worry about threats and not worry about governments, and they've given us our freedom.
Traditionally, the peacekeeping role for Canadian soldiers. Recently with them going overseas a little bit more often, keeping the country safe. I think people know that they work here and abroad to keep us safe.
They did what they had to do. They defended their country and defended the free world, and now we're living in a relative time of peace. There's never been a war in my generation.
I'd say the legacy is sacrifice. I'd also say that it's also a time to reflect peace and why we should think about peace, more peaceful ways to resolve conflicts or be involved in conflict. So I know Canada sends peacekeepers. I think that's a really good start, at least.
They keep our country together, and that's the whole idea.
Not so much. I mean, great deal of pride. I think it's more kind of on the global side of things. I think it shows Canada cares about democracy and taking care of human rights, and making sure that we, our men and women in service, kind of try and take the things that we often take for granted, give them to people who don't have them.
Here at the National War Memorial in Ottawa, thousands of Canadians gather every November 11th, not only to remember those who have fallen, but also to remember those who have come home and those who continue the battle. So we sent this next question to Canadians. How will you mark Remembrance Day this year?
I stay home with my kids, and I'll tell them about the story, and I'll try to teach them what happened on this day. What is this day? But I get to be educated myself too, because I don't know much, to be honest.
Oh, I plan to come downtown with my family and attend the ceremonies, actually. Yeah, that's the big thing for me, is to remember. Our grandfather was, he's passed away, but yeah, we'd like
he
to
served?
remember him. Yeah, in the Navy, long time ago. So.
Okay, and yourself?
Well, this is my family, so yeah, maybe we'll join you this year in your celebrations, or how you're marking Remembrance Day.
I actually haven't thought that far ahead. I know that I live very close to the grounds, the
War Memorial.
Yes, and it is a possibility. I've gone several years before to stand there and see the ceremonies, so it is a possibility, but nothing concrete yet.
You will be, no matter where you are, remembering otherwise, though?
Oh yes, definitely.
Oh, I walk around, go to the memorial, look at the crowd,
Is that something you do every year?
Yeah.
And how does that make you feel?
Well, make me feel as usual means I hate war. And we shouldn't be doing that. We should be civilized enough to understand that there is other means to understand our problem, find solution without guns.
We're going to be going down to Remembrance Day ceremony. It's great to live in Ottawa because you're able to actually partake and thank the veterans and thank everybody that participates. So we're going to be at the Remembrance Day.
Is that something you do most every year?
Yes, I bring my children down because it's important for them to remember, and it's not just the poppy to remember. I feel in the education system and everything, it's not being enforced when I was a kid. So it's really important that they get to see and experience it and understand it.
I'm a military spouse, So it's already, you know, Remembrance Day is already a big deal for us. You know, you get up in the morning and I watch my husband put his uniform on and get ready for his parade and then go watch him on parade. So yeah, it's important to me. It's important to the people in our family.
I'm not really sure yet what I may do yet. I know probably join the Legion, that's for sure. I was a member back in the 70s when I'm going to renew it. Yeah, just in honor of my mother.
I will wear a poppy and I will take a moment on November 11th to remember.
I always pray for the veterans and for our ancestors that were in the war, all the Aboriginal people that went to the war for us, and I pray for them and for their families.
I do the same thing every year. I find the service that's going on in town, and I go and attend that. Take a couple hours out of my Remembrance Day to take care of that, and I've always felt it's something that we really should do given the opportunity. We have a stat for exactly that reason, so I think it's really the best use of my time off on that day.
We have a community Remembrance Day service that takes place in the King's Playhouse, and it features veterans and service members and sort of the ceremony of a traditional Remembrance Day ceremony with the reading of the honor roll. It also has a multimedia component. We had a member of our community a number of years ago who traveled to Europe and found each of the graves of the men on our honor roll. And so we have pictures of those grave sites and we have pictures of the men. It's a big deal that we have the children participate, and then we have a lovely luncheon afterwards.
Remembering. So I have my grandfather to remember. I have friends' fathers to remember, friends and friends that served. So that's what I'll be remembering.
I usually attend the ceremony. I'm a Nova Scotia boy, so I usually go to the synagogue closer to my community, but I do usually go every year. And St. Margaret's Bay, Nova Scotia, so out in near Hackett's Cove.
I'll be attending the ceremony in Stratford, as they always do. It's always between Charlottetown and Stratford, but I live in Stratford now, so I'll be attending memorial service there.
I'll go down to the cenotaph and pay my respects and have kind of a quiet day and perhaps watch some of the service from Ottawa as well.
As a veteran, I sometimes go down to watch them do their thing, and I'm not good with crowds, so I'll be off to the sides. But it's great to see homage paid to the veterans, especially the fallen soldiers. So I'll normally do that, but sometimes we'll go to Cape Breton and do a little trip too. So.
For our next segment, we sent our cameras out across the country to give Canadians the opportunity to express their thoughts to those who fought for our independence. Our question: what is your message to Canada's war veterans?
Thank you for your service, and I hope you get compensated and you have all the things you need to live a happy life.
I'm sorry, we're not doing better for you financially and with, services for people with post-traumatic stress and homeless vets. I'm sorry we're not doing better.
My Uncle George was in the war. My Uncle Pete was in the war. And one came back, the other did not. And I always wear the poppies and I support them. Always.
Absolutely. We salute the vets that have put their lives forward to save this country, to do the things that they need to do for the freedom. Those men and women that put themselves out there have done great duty for us, and we really appreciate what they've done.
I think people forget the past, and I think it's important to remember sacrifices that people made for our country. And that's all I can say, is that sacrifices were made, and people need to remember that every day, not just Remembrance Day.
Thank you for everything you've done and continue doing for us and to let us live the life that we have today.
I would say that most of Canada understands some of the challenges, but not all of your unique challenges from the very specific situations that you've been in, both here locally and around the world. And I would say if there are support measures, if there is mental health challenges that you need a hand with, please feel free to speak up. Please reach out. Don't suffer in silence. And feel free to educate all of the generations of your unique challenges, because you have a very specific and special perspective on the world, and it deserves to be understood.
Thank you for fighting, for giving your life. Sorry that if you feel neglected, if you feel that it's been in vain, know that there are people that are grateful and thankful.
I just think that we should always be supportive of them. They gave a lot of their time and effort, and usually of their body in some way, shape, or form. So, regardless of your thoughts on why they're fighting, they went and they did something, and they put their time on the line and their body on the line, life on the line. So we should always, I think, be there as a backstop to support them. It's unfortunate to see so many homeless veterans on the street.
It's difficult to tell. Maybe to remember how big the impact is to go to war, and to always remember that we should try to keep peace instead of making war.
Just that I hope Canadians keep remembering them as we lose more and more of them each year. I just hope that they stay in everybody's memory.
I just want to say Masicho, Guana, merci. Thank you very much for keeping our country together, and God bless you all.
Thanks for everything, and keep up the good work. We're very proud of you.
Glad the ones that are alive are still alive. Yeah, and we have everything to be thankful for from them, without a doubt.
Thank you so much, and we need to keep remembering this day, to have this day to remember what you did for the Canada.
I'm gonna cry. Thank you.
Yeah, it's it's a time to, a chance to express your gratitude. It's hard to put into words.
The respect, the appreciation, the fact that you remember is huge. You can't, it's unimaginable right now for a lot of people what these people went through. And it's a good time to get together, to remember, and don't forget, so that this doesn't happen again, hopefully.
What can you say to those people except thanks? How many of them gave their lives for this freedom in this country, and all the free country in the world? That's very simple. You feel a bit, it's not enough to say thank you, but,
That's all you can do?
Unfortunately.
Thank you for all the freedoms you have given this country, this people. Every breath that I take is because of you. Thank you very much for all your service and all your dedication you've given this country.
For generations, Canada's veterans have put themselves in harm's way on our behalf. Sadly, many have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and for many more, the mental and physical scars remain to this day. But do you feel they're getting the respect they deserve? And what approach should the federal government take? Our question: what advice would you give the federal government in dealing with veterans?
My advice would be, just continuing to support now an aging veteran population. I guess we're talking veterans of all wars, so continued support programs for these people coming back from places of conflict, because I imagine it's pretty hard to transition back after being in a place of war. So having programs to really support these people who go out and do sacrifice.
I'd say veterans have done enough for us, so we should probably put in for them. I've heard of the buyout system. I don't quite believe in that. I think we should always be there for them right till the end. Some of these guys have a lot of problems coming back, so we should help them all the way.
In my experience, I'm an employment consultant, and I see a lot of retired veterans coming through, and I'm finding the main point that they're all bringing up is there's not enough mental health services for them, or there's no job search services for them in Veterans. I called Veterans Canada myself and I said, well, what services do you have? Well, if and or but and checklist. They need to have more services for people experiencing mental health, and how can we transition them back to work?
Listen to the veterans, hear the concerns, you know, it's their own community too, so they gotta get looked after for sure.
Obviously, we should support our veterans as much as we can. I mean, they made great sacrifices, as Rona said, for our country in order for us to have freedom. And I don't think those are the kind of things you forget.
I would suggest dealing with kindness and empathy first and foremost, because like we discussed before, it's probably often misunderstood, unique set of needs that can't be pigeonholed into the usual boxes and dealt with a single committee or within one budget. It's an ongoing challenge and unique opportunity to show support that needs to be dealt with kindness and empathy.
I don't see a need for like a limit to the budget, essentially. Like, we should kind of do whatever we need to ensure they're supportive, investing in programs that help them get back on their feet, get back into, you know, civilian jobs, that kind of thing. I just don't know that there really needs to be a cap on that.
To acknowledge what they did for the country and to estimate them highly for what they did, because they gave their lives and their health to serve their country.
I think the war veterans have to be treated properly, and it's a huge issue. I guess it's on the periphery because it's not so visible anymore. You've got less and less war veterans, but when you see things like the payment to Omar Khadr, it becomes a real issue. If we say we don't have enough to help pay the veterans health care or benefits, that's wrong. That's wrong. You've got to look after these people.
I think one thing they need to do, and I hear this a lot from the veterans I work with, is that they just don't get to them early enough. Like when they're coming out of the military or they're in the military, they need to do a better job there, I think, to help some of these veterans. A whole lot of them are in the community that I work with personally, just don't have counseling or resources put in place, and they're just going with whatever's there, and just not, a whole lot of them are not pensioned for conditions that they've been in that happen in military. I think they just need to do a better job with them so they can come out in the society and they can adjust better.
I think that they should receive similar support and subsidies that we give to immigrants. I think that if they've been willing to fight and give their life for our nation, they should be on par with what we're giving to newcomers. I'm all for supporting newcomers, but I just ask for a fair, subsidized support across the board, including seniors.
They should have guaranteed health care, including mental care.
Yeah, they should get moving on their promises.
On November 11th, acknowledging the sacrifices of our men and women in uniform is easily top of mind. But July 1st not only marks Canada Day, but also the anniversary of the Battle of Beaumont-Hamel, where the 1st Newfoundland Regiment in 1916 were virtually annihilated by the Germans. 733 of 801 soldiers were killed or wounded. So even though we acknowledge these events, should we do more? Our question: does Canada do enough to honor its men and women in uniform?
I think that we could probably do a little bit more. Instead of just having it for one day, it should be more than just one big day that we remember all these fallen soldiers on. We should have more events throughout the year for them and more days to put towards them.
I'm not sure that we've done enough in terms of our education of younger people with regard to the kinds of sacrifices our service men and women have made over the last 2 centuries. I think certainly with regard to more recent war efforts, the whole country doesn't feel at war in the same way that it would have done in earlier war efforts. We're not rationing we weren't rationing when we were in Afghanistan, for example. So the way that we feel war as a civilian is slightly different. And I think because of that, we seem sort of removed from the sacrifices that it entails.
Absolutely not. Why? They don't get the
I think because of the young people, they don't understand what it was. The government does not support its past veterans, not to the point that I believe they should. And the younger people, I don't think, have been raised to understand or respect what the veterans have done for them in the past.
Yes, I think the various ceremonies we have, it's ingrained in our school system as well. There are memories there. I think also when we name streets after, that's remembering as well. I think there could be more done to remember and commemorate, absolutely.
You know, they did a lot of sacrifices that we don't have any clue to what they've gone through.
I'm not entirely sure. I think continuing the Poppy campaign is a very good way to honor veterans. In terms of like veterans programs, stuff like that, I don't really know.
Not really. Not really.
Can you expand on that at all?
We should be recognizing especially the veterans that are disabled, and in need of help. Perhaps more could be done for them.
No, I don't think so. There should be more awareness, especially for the elders.
You can always do more. I come from somewhere else where I think we could probably do a little better. There's always more you can do. I think we do an okay job, but like I said, there's always a lot more you can do on the mental health side, PTSD side, and it's an ongoing battle. You're never going to be perfect, but like I said, always more you can do.
That's all for this Remembrance Day edition of Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. On behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.